Break out the Kleenexes because this episode gets a little bit emotional. We're talking about the story of someone whose life was made better by chiropractic care just as their life outside the womb was starting. We're also talking about music, which is fun to mix in with health, and about setting the intention with music so that that music is improving the life of people who hear it, just like an adjustment is improving the life of the person who receives it. We're also talking about this big idea that you are perfect, you are well, you are whole. When interference is removed, you can be returned to that state of wholeness. So welcome to What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of an Ache podcast. I'm Jenna Quinton, your host and founder of Adjust Your Media. And in this episode, Dr. Singer talks a little bit about how he is doing chiropractic marketing. If you are interested in more about what he's talking about, look in the show notes. There is a link to Adjust Your Marketing Blueprint where you can get more of that. There's also all kinds of other helpful links in the show notes, so be sure to go look for those. Welcome back to What Chiropractic Doesn't Cure, Stories of an Ache. Today I have Dr. Lewis Singer. Welcome.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, so you've been a chiropractor in Boynton Beach for about how long?
30 years. I started when I was 7.
Perfect. What a wonderful thing. I've got a 6-year-old who's about ready, so I'll send him your way to show him how.
Love
okay.
it.
So I would love for you to tell us a story today about somebody whose life got better under chiropractic care.
Okay. Well, I knew you were going to ask that question, and I don't know if this will show up when this is actually put out there for the public, but I sent you a headshot of me. It wasn't really a headshot. It was a picture of me outside of the Balenciaga store in the Miami Fashion District, where I was the other day with my son, Dove, who was born Benjamin. He goes by Dove now. The reason I sent you that picture was because my son is studying fashion in Atlanta, Georgia, at the Savannah College of Art and Design, their Atlanta campus.
How fun is that?
He loves it. It's really great. It's kind of funny. I ask him, when he's home, I'm like, how's everything at home? He's like, I wish I was back at school. And you kind of want your kid to say that, know? So 20 years ago, my wife at the time, Nicole, and I were having Benjamin, Dove, at home. And even though Nicole was a little older, she was 41 years old, everything with the birth was going great as far as everything leading up to the birth. We had an amazing midwife, we had an amazing doula, and we had Benjamin at home, or she had Benjamin at home, I should say. When Benjamin came out, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck a couple of times.
Oh boy.
So he came out, I'm going to cry. So he came out not breathing. And all of a sudden, the midwife was doing CPR on him. And it was kind of, as I remember, one of those scenes where everything just slowed down. It's just like, it seemed like hours. And I remember the doula in the corner, she was just praying. I mean, she was just like in the corner, she was just praying and praying and praying. And God, it seemed like forever went by. And I was just watching Benjamin's life basically begin and end right there in our house. And this thought came into my mind: stupid, you're a chiropractor. Check your child.
Wow.
And I reached out, I don't even think I said anything. I reached out my hands to the midwife, who was absolutely having no luck reviving Benjamin. And she gave me Benjamin. And a child's adjustment or an infant or a newborn adjustment is very different, as you know, Jenna, from an adult. There's no, it's just finger pressure. It's just very simple. Well, I threw that out the window. I basically grabbed Benjamin's neck and I gave him probably a very light adult adjustment, one way and then the other on his atlas. And within a moment or two, he was breathing again. Wow. And everything was fine. And that's somebody's life, not only really literally saved with chiropractic, but all the people he impacts, his mom and I. And, it was funny at the time, and some of your listeners may know Dr. Armin Rossi, who teaches at Sherman. And Armin was in private practice at the time, about 20 minutes from where we lived. And I remember, even though Benjamin was breathing, I mean, I was still shaking. I was shaken up. I just couldn't believe this happening. So I remember calling Armin, and it was late at night. I'm like, you got to get over here. Please, whatever you're doing. I think he was sleeping. And he walked me through a couple of questions. He's like, "Is the child breathing?" Yes, the child's breathing. Did you adjust the child? I adjusted the child. But I was like, I basically begged. I'm like, "You just got to get over here." I'm like,
Hmm.
"You're the master, and you have to make sure everything's okay, even though everything was okay." And he did come, and I remember when he got to the house, it was sort of like the clearing, like the Red Sea. Like I remember the doula and the midwife, they just they like scattered, and here comes Armin Rossi right down to my child who's laying on the bed. And he checked and everything was good. He was in alignment. And that's the story of my son, Dove, who's now 20 years old, who's in Atlanta, like I said, studying. And his life was changed through chiropractic care in the hugest way possible. And of course, everybody he touches, including his mom and myself. So there's a
Well,
story.
I love this. Thank you for sharing this emotional story. I'm looking because this story connects with me emotionally because I was 11 years old watching my sister be born, and she also was not breathing, was resuscitated. And so I have this little picture that I keep here of my little sister, as she was perfect and chubby and well. Now she's 27. And, you know, that
I
emotional
love it.
moment of watching, like you said, this life begin and end. And this was the baby sister that I had prayed for, that I had asked for, that I had said, I would like another little sister, please. This one, can she be mine? As an 11-year-old, can she be mine?
Oh,
And then that moment as a child thinking, like, why would God give her to me and take her?
yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. She was not adjusted on that day. She was adjusted. We had a family chiropractor. We weren't all under chiropractic care at that point. My mom occasionally got adjusted, but we had a chiropractor who came a little bit later. It's been years, so it's fuzzy whether it was the next morning, but said, okay, this child had such a complicated, dramatic birth. Her head was born for 8 minutes before the rest of her was born. I
Oh,
can't imagine. I'm sure you can explain that better of the pressure on her cervical vertebrae. But for her to be checked and to then thrive and do well, like you said, this one tiny life affecting so many others. It's a beautiful thing. So is this a story that you love to share with families as well?
It's interesting. I haven't really shared it a whole lot. I remember once sharing it at a Saturday Night Live, which is a gathering of chiropractors down here in South Florida. And I
Mm.
remember I was asked to speak. And I actually remember I was telling the story. I had Benjamin in one of those little daddy holders like in
Yeah,
front of me while I was telling the story. I haven't really told it that much
yeah.
to many people.
But
Interestingly
it
enough,
is, it is, I
it's
know.
emotional.
And it is. And it's something that's something that I've talked about too, is that maybe our stories are not something that we always share. So I so deeply appreciate you sharing it here, but it's always something that we carry with us that is informing us as we're doing things and interacting with people. So even if it isn't something that's said out loud, it's something that definitely is going into things. So I think particularly with pediatric chiropractic care, like what a big impact for their whole life. So,
Yeah, amazing. And you know what? There's really nothing like I have a family practice. We're down here in South Florida, so we see our share of older folk. I'm becoming
mhm,
an older folk as well, so I shouldn't talk to them. But anyway, it's just amazing when families come in and not everybody gets the big idea. Oh gosh, it used to bother me so much when a mom or dad would leave their kid in the waiting room and and they get adjusted and it was really really hard for me to give love and serve that
mm,
person because their kid, I mean, they brought their kid to the office, their kid's sitting in the waiting room, and we do a pretty bang up job of education. We're always doing our ticket, the tables. I have an orientation every patient has to come to. That's my like one big requirement. Every patient has to come, every practice member has to come to an orientation when they start
love
to
it.
really learn about the big idea and what we do and to get that feeling and what I feel. And it took me a long time not to hold back the love,
Mm,
and love changes a lot of things. And when you love on that person and you maybe drop hints along the way, eventually they may bring in their children, they may bring in their spouse, but you love them no matter what because everybody's at a different place. And it took me a long time to get to the place where I honored the place where everybody else was. I would
that's
almost say it
beautiful.
took me like 30 years and I'm still
Yeah.
learning.
Yeah. Well, I would love for you to explain to us when you say the big idea, what is the big idea in chiropractic?
Well, the big idea is it's interesting. I was actually thinking about this today, even though this was a question I didn't know you were going to pose. The big idea is that we have everything we need to be happy, to be healthy. Everything is inside of us, okay? For our body to work well. We're created from a sperm and an egg, and within 9.5 months, here we are, able to breathe, able to digest, able to think, able to do all the wonderful things that we need to do. And when you have this mindset, that's the big idea. The big idea is that we're perfect. We were
Mm.
born perfect and we're perfect. And if for some reason we feel that we're not, it's usually because something interfered with that perfection. Another way of looking at life is to basically say, we're sick, we are fragile, we are not made well. That's an affront to the creator right there, but okay. We're not made well. And if you think that way, yes, you need all the medications, you need all the doctor's visits, you need the vaccinations because, we're living in this horrible world and we're not equipped.
Mm.
What a sad way to go through life. And a lot of patients do that, at least until they hopefully start getting their mind changed to this new way of thinking, which is not really new. It's been around for 125 years or so, is that, we're perfect and everything we need is already inside of us. And again, like I said, if we don't have something we need, it's because there's an interference. Something is getting in the way. And in the case of chiropractic, it's typically what's called a vertebral subluxations, when the vertebra is out of place, putting pressure on the nerve, preventing messages from the brain going to the rest of the body. And through a very simple adjustment, we remove the interference. So it's not giving anything to the body because the body's perfect. Okay.
Right.
Again, that's the philosophy of chiropractic. We remove the interference, the body's able to do what it's supposed to do. Brain's connected to body, body's connected to the brain, and the body starts to heal. And then there you go. And what a great way of living life. I've recently thought this, if I do a little aside, I thought this about
Yeah.
my practice because we had a really kind of tough year in 2024. And I really kind of reflected on that as far as I'm not really where I wanted to be goal wise as far as my practice. And I've been working with Dr. Ed Cordero as my coach. I've been working with you, Jenna, which is awesome. The stuff that you put out for chiropractors is like mind blowing. I have my whole staff doing stuff. We kind of divided all the social media, like, you take Snapchat and you take YouTube and you take this.
Yeah.
So me and my two assistants have, one assistant's got email and I got, what do I have? I have Facebook. My younger assistant, she's got Instagram because I know nothing about that. And we're kind of taking all your stuff and dividing it, which is really great.
Perfect.
But what I really came to the point is we've got something amazing to give to the public. And if the public's not finding out about it, it's not because what we have isn't amazing, it's because something is getting in the way. And it's usually us, and it's usually the chiropractor. And
Mm.
I really started kind of praying and using this time between Christmas and New Year's to just look at the ways that I was not giving love, as I said before, and preventing
Hmm.
people from going forward and stuff. And I got some really, really great emotional revelations. And I don't know how I got to that point, but yeah. Oh, so all of life is about interference. If you get rid of
Yes.
the interference, things work beautifully. That's a chiropractic practice. That's our body. That's a relationship. All of our relationships. It's finances. It's everything.
Hmm.
If we just get out of the way, find out where we're in the way, get out of the way, and then from there, the magic starts to happen. So,
I love
did I answer
that.
your question?
Absolutely. And I think that this philosophy of the big idea is not as common as we would like it to be. It's not as prevalent in society. There's a song, and you're a musician, and we'll get into that, but there's a song that comes up, and the chorus goes, I will fix you. Do you know which one that is? I'll
No,
have to pull
interesting.
it up, but it has a beautiful entry where it's talking about, when this is going wrong, when that is hard, when you're struggling. And then the chorus where you're like, and it goes, I will fix you. And I'm like, oh, turn it off, Alexa, stop that. Because it is that we have this idea of starting out broken, like you
Mhm.
said, instead of perfect. And instead of looking at, yes, where's their interference, whether it's, yeah, relationships or gut health, or anything else, instead of looking at where do we need to make this small adjustment that would make all the difference of removing this interference, like you said, in relationships with my husband this year, going to couples therapy and seeing like how can we really improve this relationship instead of stagnating, where we can say, hey, this is the moment, this is where we need to pause and get off the train, because that's a train going somewhere we don't want to go. Where can we pause in a conversation and just say, I would love to talk about this later, but I am grumpy. I need to eat. I need to sleep. Let's continue this conversation later when I can continue it in a spirit of love. But finding
Oh,
those things
sweet.
where this is the moment, this is the interference, this is the thing that when it's removed, we can express life fully. And that's what I wanted to ask you next was you really are someone who I see you expressing life and living fully with stage acting in your community theater musicals, with your 1980s cover band, which is awesome. How do you help people live life and express fully? Like, how do you show them? And we kind of mentioned it already, but showing them that it's not about not getting sick, but expressing life fully in these ways.
Oh, I love that. Great question. It's funny. On our intake forms, we ask patients, practice members, what are their interests or their hobbies,
Oh, yeah.
And not only is it a good way for me to get to know them, but maybe something they're doing, if they're a golfer, that could really affect their spine. And we could kind of talk about that. And so many people just leave it blank. And I'm just like,
Mm.
and in my report that I type up, I'm like, the patient indicated they had no interest or hobbies. And I'm like, oh, how sad. Like, life can't all be about work and stuff. It's got to be about play. So for me, it's acting and it's music. As you mentioned, thank you for the plug. I do have an 80s tribute band. It's called Living the 80s. There's five of us. I'm the singer with the name Singer. Isn't that funny? This is the
Yeah.
first band I've actually been the lead singer.
Nice.
And I'm the singer and the keyboard player. We've got a guitarist, a bass player, a drummer, and we've got a female sax player who's she's the darling of the band. Everybody just loves her because she's one lady in this gang of guys. And she plays sax and she sings and she plays keyboard and percussion. She does everything, everything that's needed to be done, she does. And, it's really interesting because before we go on stage, and of course, I'm the leader of the band and I'm pretty observant in my religious practices and stuff. And we do a little huddle and we all take a shot of something to drink and we go around and we tell each other we're rock stars. And then we get into a prayer, and I always thank God for the people in the band. And I ask God to not only look over us that evening and help us to do a good job. And I really feel this way, and I say this, and I really feel this, and this is not a fake thing. This is, and my band members will tell you, wow, he really means it. I ask God to help us to remember it's not about us; it's
Mm.
about the music.
Yeah.
That I grew up in the 80s and I went to high school and I went to college in the 80s. And that, you give me an 80s song and I'll tell you who I was dating at the time and what was happening and what was good and what was not good. And, was I being picked on? Was I already in college? Whatever the case may be. And I ask God to help us to remember that it's not about us. It's about the music, the people that we're performing for, to let that touch their heart, to let them bring out something that maybe they've forgotten, maybe something they needed to
Yeah.
look at, whether it's good or whether it's bad, to help them relive a time for just a couple hours that we're performing. And so it brings it to a much higher level. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to find a way to do this in every area of my life. Of course, I do it as a chiropractor, that's a
Mm-hmm.
given, but I'm doing it in my music as well. And really to add that God essence and add that higher thing. And I think anything that you do. I mean, listen, you see these athletes that play football and golf and, all the glory to God. And
Yeah.
you know what, it really does take it to a higher level. And I'm trying to remember the question, but how do you express life?
Exactly.
I think doing these great things, and then maybe if you're able to find a way to take it to another level through either praising God or expressing love or just
Mm-hmm.
helping other people. I mean, I want the people that when we play, I want them to feel like it was a chiropractic adjustment. I want them to leave feeling different and
Yeah.
dude, I haven't heard that song in 40 years. Oh my God. I was crying, man. That was my first marriage. And I was like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
we did our job. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's how I express life.
It is because I was thinking about it yesterday. We get soul sickness, you know? where we have a bout of soul sickness, and music is such a great adjustment to that. I just looked it up because I didn't want to misspeak. Every time the song Footloose comes on, because I was like, that's an 80s song, yes. But every
Yeah.
time Footloose comes on, it's full stop. We're gonna stop everything and we're gonna dance this out. I don't know. That song just it hits me,
I
and
love that. I have a funny story, and I don't think he would mind telling me this. Years ago, and Dr. Cordero, the past president of
yeah.
Sherman, and he had a practice not too far from me. I have to have music when I adjust.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's mellow stuff. It's like the spa. Sometimes it's hip hop stuff. Sometimes it's Christian contemporary. Sometimes it's 80s. Sometimes it's watercolors. And Ed Cordero had, before he was President Sherman, he was in practice. And I remember he was going to South America for a week or so, and he had me cover his office. He had an adjustatorium, which is basically, instead of adjusting rooms, is one big room and has all the tables. And I was getting ready. They were getting ready to open up the doors, and there's no music, there's no sound or anything like that.
Oh.
So I go to one of his assistants. I go, "Where's the music?" And she was Spanish. She goes, "Oh, Tato Cordero, he doesn't like it when it's noisy. He like it quiet."
Mm.
And I thought, this is the last time I'm covering for my friend Dr. Cordero. I
It's
gotta
tricky.
have music, and music is really powerful, in my life and to
Yeah.
so many of
Well,
us.
and I love, like you said, setting that intention of what is the reason that we're playing? What is the reason that we're adjusting? What is the reason that I'm writing content? And that is something that I want to be in the practice of, praying over content before I hit send and send it to a client for review. So it's the beginning of the month. So I'm planning out and emailing clients, praying over this outline. Like, is this the right thing? So we're getting ready for February. Is this what people in February need to hear? Is this what they need to see? Because if not, please give me that nudge that tells me, don't talk about heart health in February this year. We're not doing it. Okay,
Wow.
news to me. News flash. But to have that intention, and it's interesting talking about music. I'm working on beautifying this other wall of my office, and I thought, maybe I'll hang up my violin because I used to play violin. And I
Ooh.
thought, maybe if it's hanging there, maybe I'll pull, a Thomas Jefferson and sometimes get my violin down and play. But,
You
the thing
should.
with violin is for so many years, I lost my intention. What was the intention of playing violin? It was that's what everybody is doing as a teenager. So many friends were doing music and instruments. It was the thing to do as a teenage homeschooled girl in the Midwest. You play an instrument. And so for years, I lost my intention there. Also, I was in an orchestra. I was in the Wichita Youth Symphony, and I was not good enough to be in that orchestra. Just saying. Something for my audition, and I know that you've experienced this as a musician, those moments where you are such in an innate state that it's flowing through you. The music is coming through. I had never experienced that. My audition for the Youth Symphony, I'm standing there playing, I don't even remember what it was called, and shaking with adrenaline, which is good for violin, but I played my heart out and they let me in. And then I had to show up every Saturday and be in this orchestra. And I was the very last chair of second violins, meaning the very lowest rank of violins.
But
And
you made
yet
it.
I made it. And what a beautiful seat to sit in. And I tell everybody that was a beautiful seat to sit in. If there's any way that you can beg your way into sitting in an orchestra and having that music swirling around you and
You were like
washing
right in the
over you.
middle, right?
I had flutes on my
Right.
left. I had timpanis behind me. I had first and second violins to my right. I could
Oh,
see
sweet.
the conductor. One time I was in a local orchestra and we had a conductor who didn't speak English. And we understood him so well. Such an amazing experience. But I haven't played violin in probably 15 years. And now it's time. Now I know the intention, the purpose of this is worship to God. This is my connection back to that innate moment of playing my heart out. And I think that, yes, anytime that we lose our way, whether it's writing or in practice or in any of those things, like you said, setting that intention, what am I doing this for?
Oh my God, I love that. I absolutely love that. Just as an aside, my favorite type of music is Christian contemporary music. And I'm Jewish. I'm an observant Jew. And my favorite music, when I was at Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, my friends turned me on to Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith and Stephen Curtis
Yeah.
Chapman and Jars of Clay and Mercy Me and oh my gosh, and I'm probably the only Jew in Florida that drives to synagogue on a Saturday morning with the windows down, blasting Jars of Clay or Stephen Curtis Chapman. The reason I love that music, and actually I thought about fronting a Christian contemporary band for a while, which is I think kind of funny in a way, me doing that, but it's music with a purpose. It takes music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's great to sing about like girls and dates and this and that. And, if you're singing country, my truck got stuck in the mud,
Hey.
it's important stuff, but to take it to that higher level and to sing about God.
Mm-hmm.
And oh my God, I was listening to Michael W. Smith, some of his early 80s stuff the other day. I am sure there will be a way. Oh my gosh. And Friends. And so anyway, that's kind of why I like that music more than
Mm-hmm.
more than any other music, even though I have a wide range. I mean, one minute I'm listening to Eminem, and the next minute I'm listening to Amy Grant. People are like, dude, and then the next minute I'm listening to Tchaikovsky, and then the
Yeah.
next minute I'm listening to Howard Jones. But I like it because it takes it to a higher level, and it takes music, and it's like we're going to bring it to a higher level by singing about our relationship with God. And I
Yeah.
love that. And that's just, again, you could do that with anything. I think it's just easier with Christian contemporary music because, God's in the song. So there
Yeah.
you go.
Love it. Well, and that's the thing too, like just with chiropractic, yes, does any adjustment by a skilled chiropractor remove the interference? Yes. But if you're doing it with love, you're taking it to that next level. If you're connecting innate to innate, you're taking it to that next level. So I love that. I think we could talk for hours and hours, so we'll definitely have to do this again. I
I
love
love
the
it.
musical aspect. I think sometimes chiropractors think they need to be more doctory. And I love that you are showing up as yourself with, yeah, with your main character energy, as they say. And I love that you're just sharing all of this as well so that chiropractors can just be inspired and show up with more love. So thank you for sharing that.
Well, I appreciate that. I love talking with you. You're doing such a great job with us. And I have to tell you, everything that I said today is still things I'm working on.
Mm.
30 years in the practice. I don't have it down yet. And I will probably go back and listen to this and I'll be like, wow, I said that. I really got to step it up a little bit. So I thank you so much. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you for being here.